Hello everyone, my name is Mary Rains and this is my Module 9, which is the case study. The first section was to summarize the case, so here's my summary. On a spring day, Richard, the vice principal, was notified that two boys, James and David, had been seen in an exchange where drugs were possibly involved. Richard made the decision to have both boys brought to his office to figure out what was going on. The officer at the school was also asked to sit in on the conversation. During that meeting, it was discovered that James asked David to hold on to his brass knuckles for him. James even admitted to forcing him to do so. However, the officer arrested both boys and charged them with a felony for being in possession of a prohibited weapon. Richard disagreed with this decision because David was not only forced into this act, but also had never been in trouble. Furthermore, the officer pointed out that both boys were to be written up and were to be expelled for no less than 45 days. Richard contacted parents to let them know of the situation, and David's mother came down to the school outraged by what was happening to her son. Richard decided that he would not write David up because it would ruin his future. He didn't want him to be put in the DAEP program. A week later, Richard received a phone call from the director of secondary education. He was told that he needed to write up David or he would be reprimanded himself. Section 2 is to report any legal or ethical issues, i.e., information to use for ethical or legal decision making. So the first one is legal issues that took place during this case. Brass knuckles are prohibited on school property, and that's actually a felony case. David is in possession of prohibited item. James admits they are his. So according to the law, they are both at fault here. A police officer is present and has to follow the law without bias. School policy is that both kids are suspended for at least 45 days. Inman has to fill out the DAEP report on David or he is in breach of district policy. Ethical issues that come along with this case. First one being it's David's first offense. This one moment could actually affect his whole future. David was forced into doing it by a bigger and older classmate. Inman has chosen between David's future and his own, or has to choose between his future and David's. Section 3 is to synthesize the case. So given all the facts at hand, Inman made a choice to protect the well-being of David instead of following school policy and writing him up for expulsion. Step 4 is to synthesize the facts. So I just outlined the people, places, and the program itself. So starting with people, Richard Inman is the assistant principal, and he's also from the South Side himself. James is big, tattooed. He's 15, leader of the South Side Kids. David Ramos is 13. This is his first offense. He's a trombonist, and he's an honors student. David Ramos's mother, what we need to know about her is that she's very upset over this situation. James's mother was not surprised, on the other hand. The director of secondary education and then also the police officer were involved in this case. Places, the school being the first place, it's about 900 students, has at least two different demographics, one of those being the South Side kids from a rough neighborhood. The youth detention center where they took the boys is another place, and the DAEP was described by Inman as a hellhole, and that's the program that both the boys would be sent to. The program, looking at the junior high, is 13 to 15-year-olds. There's 900 students, and also, like I said, the DAEP, which is described as a hellhole, would be the program that they would be put into because of their offenses. Step 5 is to review and prioritize. So I just broke this down by questions. So the first question, could the conflict, the situation, or decision be damaging to stakeholders or to the community? If word got out, I believe that some community members might question the school. However, I believe that in any community and with any school district, there's always someone who doesn't like the way things are being done. People are allowed to have a difference of opinion. and I'm obviously speaking from experience from the 2 districts that I've been in. There's always somebody that's going to have a reason why something shouldn't be happening or why we should be doing something else. Second question is, what individuals and groups have an important stake in the outcome? I just listed them there. I think James and his mother, obviously James is one of the boys that are going to be sent to the DAEP. David Ramos and his mother, this definitely, because it's his first offense, could affect the rest of his future for this one thing. So they definitely have an important stake in this and how the situation is handled. And then I also included Richard Inman because he could possibly be reprimanded as well, and so he has a stake in this, as well as having he seems to have a pretty good relationship with a lot of his students, and so I feel like he really cares, and so that's also part of his stake in this situation, is wanting what's best for these kids. Question 3, have all the relevant stakeholders been consulted? Yes, they have been notified. The only stakeholder that had information withheld during this case, from what I know, was the DAEP. However, obviously the Director of Secondary Education called Inman, so they had been notified at some point. So yes, Inman chose not to write up David, and so that party was not notified about it. However, clearly because he got that call, someone let it leak that actually happened. However, everybody else that was involved was notified, the boys, the mothers, the staff, etc. Can I learn more about the situation? So the only thing that I really wanted to learn more about or was curious about is what will really happen to Inman if he does not write that report. So he said, the Director of Secondary Education said that he would be reprimanded. What does that mean? Does that have an impact on his future in the district? I just wanted to know more about that situation. Do I have enough to make a decision? I believe, yes, I do, even without knowing my question from above. If I had my above question answer, I would say yes. However, even without that information, I know that I would choose to not send David to the DAEP and give him a warning. I also know that given the choice, I would not choose to reprimand Inman. I believe that as educational leaders, we know how to demonstrate the capacity to evaluate ethical dimensions of issues, analyze decisions in terms of established ethical frameworks, or communicate about and advocate for ethical and legal decisions. So in this case, I believe that I would do the same thing as Inman, and I don't think Inman should be reprimanded because I think as educational leaders or just educational professionals that we should have our own discretion and we should have some trust and respect in handling these decisions and not think that one size fits all in this area. Step 6 is to identify options and possible consequences. So candidates use their understanding and capacity to undertake and implement this work within a school setting. Option 1 was the no action taken. Now I decided to break this down into 2 areas. The first being neither boys are punished, so obviously that's taking no action at all. The second is that both boys are punished, and I did this or made this an option because this would be no action taken by Inman. Like if he didn't actually take actions against David being written up, then I also kind of wanted to outline that as well. Option 2 is the most comprehensive and liberal action, so bear with me on this. Basically, the most comprehensive action that I could think of is rewriting the system. Obviously, I'm sure David was not the first. I don't think he'll be the last in this situation. And so actually looking at which students do we send, looking at school policies, just changing things so that it isn't like a one size fits all with this. And then I even included down here that I would modify it to fit every modify it to fit every situation. For example, I would make a decision tree and outline all actions, situations, and choices. So kind of like what we've had to do in previous assignments, I would do that here so that there would be a flow chart saying, okay, this is who gets to go, this is who doesn't, this is the consequence for that action, and so on and so forth. Option 3 are just some intermediate strategies. So the first one is there are student advocates for these cases, which basically would mean that there would be like a task force or a group put together where in these situations there could be actual students that are advocating for their classmates and deciding on what course of action to take for them. Inman quits could be another one, like if he decides that he doesn't like the situation that he's been put in and he wants to go and find a district that will actually trust him as an administrator to make those kind of choices, then he might do that. Another one, what he chose is Inman doesn't write up David. And then my last one was they get rid of the DAEP altogether. So not that that would ever happen, but that is a possible action that could be taken. So here are my pros and cons for each of the situations. My cons for neither boys being punished would be the loss of faith in the school board. James would most likely do this again and with no consequences. It would also set a precedent for others in the school. So if somebody sees that James is not being punished for this act, then it might lead to other kids doing similar things, thinking that they're going to get away with it. The pros would be David's future is safe in this one. Both boys are punished. The con is David's future is ruined. Inman is not punished would be a pro. Option 2, with the reworking of the whole system, this would take a lot of time and a lot of brain power, and so that would be a con, that it really would take a lot of time. And the pro to this would be that not one size fits all. And so basically by doing this, we would ensure that this would not happen to students like David, or that situations like this would not come up nearly as much. And so that would be a pro of option 2. Option 3, my intermediate strategies. The first one was there are student advocates for these cases. My con is the selection process and time to put it all together and figure out that system. My 2 pros are David's future could turn out differently. So he would have more of a chance of not being sent to the DAEP, and then this situation wouldn't happen again. And so again, it would kind of help those situations. The second one was Inman quits. The con of this that I found, I don't think there would be very many pros, would be that they lost a VP that was willing to advocate for students. I think that would be a huge con for the district. 3, Inman doesn't write up David. The pro is that David's future is safe. Con is that Inman gets reprimanded. They get rid of the DAEP altogether. The con of this would be no longer a system to keep students safe and get them back on track. So step 8, I kind of picked 2 options, even though it says pick the best option. I think short term, my best option that I decided would be that I would side with Inman, that I would not write David up, and I would be reprimanded. I would also, though, going further, I would not write David up, but I would have contacted the other stakeholders involved about my decision and my decision-making process, including the director of secondary education, just letting them know where I'm at, because I think that was the only mistake that Inman really made, was not consulting others that would also have a stake in this or would also have a say in this. And then furthermore, I would even listen to what they have to say and try to ease their concerns about this decision. Long term, however, I decided the best option for me would be to, it would basically be to rework the system. I think that it would take a lot of time and a lot of energy of going through this. I think the first thing that I would do would be to kind of come up with a task force or a group with many different types of stakeholders, So what I mean by that would be parents, teachers, students, board members,